Hey there, badass dream makers. This is the Relationship of Your Dreams podcast. It's Alex, your badass dream maker host. I'm here because I believe that all humans deeply desire and thrive in loving relationships. And let me tell you, it's possible because many do find the love of their dreams and more. I'm just here as a guide to help you through the variety of obstacles and hurdles in dating and relationships so that you can also find the love of your dreams. And you're bound to learn about yourself as well. So, 2-in-1 deal. We will get deep here and you may feel triggered at times. Triggers and discomfort are part of a growth process. However, please use discretion as to how much discomfort you are ready for. Now, let's jump into this juicy episode and get you what you want. Hello and welcome back to the Relationship of Your Dreams podcast. This is Alex, your host. A big welcome to anyone who is now stepping into my space. Thank you for listening. So let's dive into this episode. This episode is about manipulating your partner's growth versus supporting your partner's growth. And you might be wondering, Alex, what's the difference? Why are we focusing on this? Why is this important in relationships? Because we talk about relationships here. Let me start with explaining why understanding the difference between if you're manipulating your partner's growth or if you're supporting your partner's growth is. When you will understand this better as I dive into it, but when you are trying to manipulate your partner's growth, you're going to notice hitting walls. You are going to feel drained and exhausted, and you are often not going to see the results that you were aiming to create. When you're supporting your partner's growth, not manipulating, but you're supporting your partner's growth, it'll feel a lot easier, less draining. It would feel like more teamwork and more on the same page. You'll feel more connected. You feel more together. While when you're manipulating your partner's growth, you feel more distant. Who wants a relationship that is draining and distant? No one, right? Okay, so we're all on board here. This is why it's important. So let's dive into this now. So let me tell you a story. With my last relationship, my last ex, I felt like I was often in fix-it mode when it came to his growth. I often intentionally pointed out my growth time after time in hope it would inspire him to grow. So not only was I sharing my excitement about my growth, I was also intentionally pointing out and showcasing my growth in hope it would inspire him to grow. And I would sometimes go silent or be passive aggressive if he went back on his word to change. And it was a hope for him to have a wake-up call about his stagnancy. I don't know if the word stagnancy is a word, but I think you get what I mean. And looking back, I now know that I was trying to manipulate his growth. Let me tell you, it was not working. Plain and simple, it just was not working. Every time that he attempted to work on his depression, he gave up. Every time he attempted to work on his job situation, he gave up. Every time he attempted to address his addiction, he gave up. There's also a time where he was also trying to get his driver's license, which he had some trauma around. And although he did eventually end up getting it, it just took a long time for him to practice and do the test and get the license, to the point that I didn't know if he was going to anymore. And even after that, even after he got his license, he still didn't try to drive much or drive me around much. And I was very understanding about the trauma, yet I felt like he was still stuck in the victim mindset and just wasn't changing for the better. And I was trying to find passive ways to manipulate his growth without even having a solid conversation. Or if I did have a solid conversation, it the change would be temporary and then he would revert. So no matter what I did, his growth was never in my control. And as I worked on myself and I grew, I felt like there was distance between us because I was changing as a person while he wasn't. And me trying to do the things to get him to grow, to manipulate him to grow, became so exhausting and draining and taxing with time. Because like I said, no matter what I did, I was just running on an endless treadmill of trying to manipulate his growth. Like, it just didn't ever reach what I wanted it to reach, what I held as expectations for him in my head, which can be a whole other episode. Expectations, a whole other episode. I'll get to that eventually. And now I am in a relationship where both my partner and I support each other's growth. It's not a matter of controlling what the other person does or how they grow. It's a matter of being there as a cheerleader, as a healthy challenger, as someone who genuinely loves to witness their partner's growth journey, and their partner's growth is based on the partner's expectations and definition. I don't want to say expectations, but the partner's definition. So my partner is working on a portfolio that is really essential in his career, and it is something that takes a lot of work and effort, which can be defeating. So it can be really defeating when you feel like there's so much work to be done and you're doing it, and you still are far from reach on where you want it to be. And not just at a perfectionistic level, but like in a realistic level, in a realistic expectation in terms of the portfolio quality. So he has his own definition of his growth in creating this portfolio. I did not try to set any sort of expectation or any like deadline as to like when he should be doing this by. I didn't try to speak about like all the things I was getting done on my end with the intention of inspiring him. Whenever I explained something about my own growth and was happy about my own growth and excited to tell him, it's never been with the intention of, hey, get your ass moving. Like, I'm doing this shit. You gotta do this shit. And you know why? Because he defined success for himself. I didn't feel like I had to define success. He has been taking action without me feeling like I need to be the one to keep the ball rolling for him. He has his own motivation, his own determination, his own discipline that I feel like I don't need to try to manipulate his growth. Instead, I'm here to celebrate every win that he has, that he defines as a win, and then maybe sometimes a little more if he sometimes doesn't think it's a win, but he definitely made progress. Like, that's still a win, and it's okay to celebrate a little more than your partner thinks should be celebrated, but it's important to still celebrate what they define as success, rather than creating the definition of success for them based on what you have in mind in terms of their growth. And this does not mean that you have to get behind absolutely everything that they are doing or saying about their goals and desires, etc. Like right off the bat, sometimes people need a healthy challenge. And someone who loves you, who knows you well, is pretty good at recognizing where you might potentially not be thinking something through, or you're overthinking something. And as someone who cares about that person, about whoever it is, like, they want to give that healthy challenge to see if that person has determined all factors and aspects of their decision, of their actions in relation to their goals and their growth. An example of a question, or some examples of questions that can be a healthy challenge, are: do you feel good about the goal that you set or the action that you're taking in towards this goal, what are your thoughts and desires specifically? How will this benefit you, and in what ways might this not benefit you? What have you thought through about it? And I could list so many more, and honestly, I'm sure there's probably examples on the internet as well. A healthy challenge is always good. And back to the concept of celebration, I know I'd already talked about celebrating your partner's wins and supporting your partner's desires, dreams, and aspirations as they are, as defined by your partner. Can you celebrate your partner's wins without asking what's next, without pushing for the next level immediately? Will that come? Hopefully, yeah. And it's also good to be in the present with each win, with each step. And it shows your partner, and it certainly shows me when my partner does this, that each step in my growth matters. Each step matters. And my steps are respected as to no matter how big or small they might feel or seem. And they were all worth it. And there was always some sort of work behind it, whether it is big or small, it is celebrated without needing to talk about the next step. Because if you can't celebrate your wins and smaller steps, like smaller wins, then how are you going to have the capacity to celebrate your bigger wins? Just let that land. I'll leave that there. So from here, I just want to ask, do you ever try to fix your partner whenever you feel they're being stagnant, which feels like all the time? Do you ever intentionally try to inspire your partner by growing yourself? Do you ever give your partner the silent treatment or passive aggressiveness when they go back on their word to quote unquote change? Or do you support your partner's desires, dreams, and aspirations without trying to change them and letting your partner define them? Do you challenge your partner through asking them healthy questions rather than making statements about their growth? Do you celebrate your partner's wins without always asking what's next? And lastly, I invite you to ponder, what does this mean to me? What does this mean to me? And what action will I take on this? What action will I take on this? I would love for you to get back to me on these questions on Instagram. My Instagram is Relationship of Your Dreams, all lowercase. Send me a DM with your answers. Let's talk about it. I am here to support you, and make sure to subscribe to this podcast, leave a review, and share with a friend on social media. And make sure to tag me so I can celebrate with you. Because as we just discussed, celebration is so important. Yeah. Thank you for listening, and I will talk to you next time.